Today, there are a number of mysteries popping up everywhere. And here to talk about one of those mysteries is a man you know and love, L.A. Marzulli. L.A., welcome to Prophecy Watch.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on, Gary.
You know, in September, we featured an article in our magazine, and with a big picture of an ugly critter.
Yes.
And the headline is, "Could this be a Nephilim hybrid?" And a lot of water has passed under the bridge since that article came out.
Absolutely. You know, Watchers, which is where this is all from, specifically Watchers 10. We've been doing these, Richard Shaw and myself, for about 6 years now, and this is the 10th episode. We have interviewed hundreds of people. We have brought numerous articles and very controversial subjects to the forefront. I mean, when you think about Planet X and Watchers 9, we discussed this with a well-known researcher, Gil Broussard, who came on the record, and I'm not a particular fan of the Planet X whole paradigm, but it was interesting because it's all over the net and a lot of people talk about it, and that's why we brought him on. So far, to the best of my knowledge, there has not yet been a real sighting of Planet X. That being said, we went with a story in Watchers 10 and also in the book Nephilim Hybrids. And to the best of our knowledge at the time, we believe that this little wing demon, the creature, the wing fairy, whatever you want to call it, was real. And the reason for this was, I sat down with a veterinarian, a local veterinarian, and we had x-rays. That's all we had, were x-rays from this creature, which were taken, we're not even sure how many years ago, but a number of years ago. We first saw them when we saw the creature about 3 years ago when we were in Mexico City filming Jaime Maussan for Watchers 7. So we saw the creature there, and we were taken aback by it, and we sat on this thing for 3 years. And then Jaime allowed us to begin to discuss it, and that's what we present in Watchers 10.
I should point out that Jaime Maussan is very famous in Mexico.
Yeah, very much so.
As a man who delves into the mysteries of life, in particular the UFO mystery. This man is a household name in Mexico City.
Millions of followers on a weekly basis.
And so being a researcher yourself into the sort of UFO, alien, demonic realm and what Bible prophecy has to say about this, you happen to be in Jaime's office and he showed you something, and there the story starts.
What happened was we went into Jaime's office. He was filming and taping another show, and he reaches up into a cabinet above him, and he takes down this jar, places it on his desk, and basically goes, "Look at this," and bounds out of the room. And Richard and I are looking at this winged thing in a jar, suspended in formaldehyde alcohol solution. And the first place I went to, Gary, was Revelation chapter 9. I mean, this thing had a stinger, it had wings, pointed ears, teeth. And I looked at Richard and I said, "Do you think it's real? Could it be a hoax?" And for 3 years, you know, every time we would talk about this thing, because we couldn't bring it to the public until we had Jaime's permission to do this, there was controversy. I leaned towards hoax, believe it or not, because in the x-rays, it shows these little white dots, round spherical objects. And I was thinking, well, maybe that's like a connection point to how this creature was actually cobbled together. But when we went to the veterinarian, right before we were getting ready to release Watchers 10 and the book Nephilim Hybrids, the vet looked at the x-rays, and to the best of his knowledge and ability, he said, "Boy, it sure looks real to me." And, you know, we were looking at these x-rays, and there were pictures, photographs, JPEGs of the x-rays, which I had downloaded, put on poster board, and showed him. And I said, "Well, what are these round little spheres throughout the creature's body?" And he said, "Well, those look like BBs." "BBs, what do you mean?" It goes like birdshot, buckshot. And at that point I went, oh my gosh, someone shot it out of the sky. And to us, that was like the clincher. That moved my truth meter from hoax all the way to this thing's real.
In fact, whoever built this thing
Yeah.
was a genius and spent
Absolutely.
hundreds of hours probably doing it, or days or weeks or months, because it's more complicated, say, than the average model airplane, which would take weeks to build. And whoever built it then inserted birdshot into it to make it look like it had been shot down. So whoever built this thing was concocting a hoax, probably in the hopes of making money, but maybe more than that, in hopes of debunking the whole Christian ethos. In other words, this guy, whoever built this hoax, in retrospect, was up to no good.
I would concur with that. You know, we don't know the name of the hoaxer. We have no idea who cobbled this thing together. It is a canard. It is a carefully crafted confabulation. That's what it is. And we didn't know this. What's amazing about this, and this is at Prophecy Watchers Conference, I stood up and said, look, right now, I believe the thing is real, but more testing needs to be done. That's also in print in the book. And so it was our intention to always bring the creature up out of Mexico. And once we got it in the States, we were going to do extensive DNA testing on it.
And
which
you did.
That's exactly what we did. Exactly what we did. Javier Martinez was able to bring the creature out of Mexico. We got it into the States, lined up a new veterinarian, and there were actually 2 vets in the office examining this thing. Because when I called and asked them if they would come on the record, well, what do you want these guys for? Well, we have a creature, we're not sure what it looks like. It looks like a bat, but it's kind of strange. And that really piqued their interest. And plus a bonus that we were offering to come in after hours, which we did. So we come in, and Javier's got the creature in a styrofoam case. It's all nice and safe, and we expose it. You know, take the thing out of the styrofoam case, put it on the desk, and Dr. Berry can't get his hand in the jar. So the other veterinarian, who's a female, put her in. She takes the thing out. Everybody's oohing and aahing on this thing. We take it right over to the x-ray machine. Now, interestingly enough, one of the arms had detached itself. So we took the arm and laid it there. It appeared like there were these like calcifications on the creature's body. And we all thought that was due to the bird shot. And that's what we were going with. Okay, so we do the x-rays on this thing. Barry takes him up, puts him up on the monitor. He's looking at this thing and he goes, well, it looks real, except right around here in the pelvic area. The way the legs are joined, that looks weird. And then you can see it on our bonus feature, which, you know, we're giving away to the public free. Anatomy of a Hoax is what we're calling it. That I say, well, you know, there's a lot of bird shot in the pelvic area. Maybe the pelvis was shattered. And Barry goes with that. He goes, yeah, that's a strong possibility. So we're you know, both veterinarians are looking at the x-rays. We have the creature and we're examining it. Everyone believes at this point that it's real. So the x-rays, and not only the x-rays, but the creature is, you know, we're pulling things, looking at the wings, looking at the tail, looking at the way the arms are attached, everything. And at this point, everyone in the room believes the creature is real. And all this takes place in about an hour and a half. And we actually take samples of the hair, we pull out the lungs and the heart, put those in a plastic lab, you know, all sealed, chain of evidence thing. All this stuff's going up to the lab for DNA testing. And we're excited about that. We took out the bird shot. We've got a sample of the bird shot. It's definitely metallic, definitely bird shot. Put that, everything's going to be tested. And at this point in time, Richard Shaw goes over to look at the detached arm. He wants to look at the hand under a microscope. So he's over there doing that, and I'm sitting there next to Dr. Berry. The creature's in front of us on this little pan. We're looking at this thing. Remember, it's been about an hour and a half, and the skin has begun to dry up, alcohol-based, and shrivel up. And the creature is laying on its side, and underneath him, there's something that's kind of weird, and my eye is attracted to it. And I reach down, and I have a little pair of tweezers, and I move the creature and pick up this thing, and I go, what the heck is this? And it's like a little piece of wood with a blob of epoxy or glue on the end of it. And I hold it up to Dr. Berry and I go, what's this? And he goes, that's a piece of wood like a toothpick, and that's epoxy. And I go, what does this mean? And he goes, it's not real. And then we look at the other arm.
So
and
I have to interrupt you. That was the moment.
That was the moment.
The moment.
That was the moment.
I remember back when we were in Colorado Springs, and you addressed our conference audience, and you said you were still trying to determine at that point whether or not this thing was real. That you were going to go for a number of tests, and now a few weeks later down the line,
we're into it.
You come to that point. And your heart sank.
Oh, I just sat there and going, you've got to be kidding me. And the moment we found that out, and this is where it just goes off the rails, Barry goes back to the x-rays, and then we can see it very clearly, because now we know what we're looking at. And to look, we know what we're looking for. We know what to look for. I'm getting all excited here. The bottom line is from here, from the elbow joint up to the shoulder.
Yeah.
Epoxy, wood, epoxy. And it's very clear on the x-ray. But what's interesting, Gary, is all 3 veterinarians who looked at the x-rays, and 2 of these were holding the creature and looking at it, all were fooled until the very last minute. Once we saw it, that was it. We were off to the races. And everybody just kind of went, oh, like the wind out of our sails, because we were so sure it was real up to the very last minute. But once we discovered it was a hoax, now we're on to the next thing. Okay, who did it? How did they do it? What kind of creatures were used to make this creature, this hoax?
And here, I want to break into the other side of this story, because you mentioned early on that this little creature was obviously built to some specification to convince someone that it was maybe a little demon in physical form. A little flying demon with a stinger for a tail and sharp teeth and so forth and so on, and
wings, right?
And bat wings.
Bat wings.
Now, whoever built this thing had a concept, and you mentioned Revelation 9 a minute ago, and the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and unto him was given a key to the bottomless pit. Opening of the story. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit. Now, I actually believe that this is going to happen someday.
I do too. It's in the future.
In the future.
And it happens here on Earth.
And in a specific place.
Yes.
There's this well shaft of the abyss, or the bottomless pit, as it's called in English. Smoke comes out of the pit. It covers the earth, and creatures come out of the earth. And I'm going to skip down to Revelation 9. 9. And they had breastplates, as were breastplates of iron, sound of wings, sound of chariots. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men for 5 months. So they have a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. Now, we conjure up an image, and I believe in Scripture explicitly. Therefore, this is going to happen. Somebody else out there with malice aforethought,
yes,
with evil motives, concocted this little guy, apparently wanting to sell it for money, or maybe more to the point, wanting to make Christians look like fools. Somebody got fooled. And that's an amazing story to me, and it speaks to the time in which we live. So let's go from that point. What do you think?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, you're right. Whoever crafted this thing did it very deliberately. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, this thing looked, when I saw it, I immediately, when I saw it, and being a student of the biblical prophetic narrative, I went in my mind and verbalized it to Richard. That looks like something out of the book of Revelation. That's exactly what I said.
Right.
And I have held to that all the way up till the moment when we discovered it was a hoax. The guy who created this thing knew exactly what he was doing,
right,
in my opinion. And the fact the stinger is there, the wings are there, the pointed ears, the teeth, I mean, it looks malevolent. I mean, when you look at the creature, it looks malevolent.
It does.
And now that we know it's a hoax, okay, fine, it's a hoax. But it goes back to what you were saying. The creator of this thing seems to have had an agenda, and it certainly has played out, at least with us.
Now, I remember when you phoned me around the time this thing was discovered to be a hoax.
Within an hour or two.
Yeah, and I've got to tell you, L.A. was in the dumps. He was really, really disheartened that this had gone this long before discovering that it was a fraud. And you were wondering, where do we go from here? Well, since then, you've really, I think, come around to the right pathway, because it's my belief that the Lord took you down this path in order to expose this and maybe a lot of other frauds and hoaxes that are going to be coming down the line.
I think we're living in a time, and we've seen this on the net. Now, for instance, let me just digress for a second. When I went out to Catalina Island, I discovered photographs, and we've talked about this.
Yes.
It's in the book Nephilim Hybrids. It's also in Watchers 10. There's a photograph, Ralph Glidden, who's a primitive archaeologist, 1919, 1921, standing in an recently opened grave, and in front of him is a skeleton in situ, very large. And we had that picture analyzed by 3 different analysts who all stated, based on the height of Ralph Gooden at 5'8", that was a skeleton just under 9 feet. So we know that that's real.
Yes.
Okay, my photograph, I held the real photograph in my hands, photograph of a photograph, and that went out. The bottom line is, we know on the net there are canards out there where giant skeletons, and you'll see these 2 guys with wheelbarrows and this huge skeleton. That's photoshopped.
Right.
And it makes you wonder why all these giants photoshopped on the internet when here's the real thing. So when people do see the real thing, they go, it's all a hoax. And I'm just wondering if that's what the creature was meant to do also.
Debunking the dark side,
Bingo.
To lead people to believe, well, all this stuff about the dark side is just all made up, and nobody can be sure, reading the book of Revelation, what that really means. It might be just figurative language.
I don't think it is.
But you don't think it is.
Not
I
at
don't
all.
think it's figurative language. No. And of course, the history of the Bible, or history as seen through the Bible, talks about supernatural creatures of all kinds. Now, again, I want to go back to the motive of that Mr. X who created this little part animal, part wooden toothpick. I guess it was made out of the thorax of a bat.
Well,
is that correct?
We think that the wings are bats, the legs and the arms are bat also, and they've just been turned around and stuck on to the actual center of the creature. We're not sure what kind of an animal that was, although it looked like a bat also. The head, for instance, the skin was somewhat removed, and either epoxy or some kind of putty was made to reshape the face so it looked more human. The ears were stuck on, and we actually went to a zoologist at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, and this man was incredible. And all this, of course, is in the little bonus feature that we have now, for free, because we wanted the anatomy of a hoax, it's called. And yes. He had bats and bat skulls and the legs, and also the little stinger, for instance. That's a real bat tail. But what the hoaxer did was took probably what looks like the claw of a squirrel and glued it. And there's skin wrapped around things. I mean, he took it all apart. And he's a zoologist, and he, once we knew it was a hoax, he got in there and started. There was also like an armature, a rod, between the base of a skull and the pelvic area, which literally held the creature together.
So whoever did this must have been very, very familiar with anatomy. Maybe
very much so.
A taxidermist?
Must have been a taxidermist.
Or a vet?
Yeah.
Possibly?
Yeah. I lean more towards taxidermist because of the glue, the way the skin was, remolded, the molding of the face, the way the ears are stuck on, the way the wings are attached to the back. And when you look at it, you can't discern that, especially if you think it's real. But then when you start to really, really go in there with it and look at it, you can see where the glue is.
Now, one more thing. There's provenance. There's a story about how this thing was found. By the side of a road, by a little kid, innocent young teenager, supposedly, who brought it to Jaime and said, "We found this by the roadside." The implications were that somebody had shot it down with a shotgun.
And that's what we all believe.
Yeah, and so it was brought to Jaime Maussan, the very famous UFO investigator and personality. By the way, people in Mexico love this guy, right? I mean, he's like...
great researcher.
Yeah, great researcher, great personality. People follow his work, and chiefly his work involves UFOs. But the story then has if you will, provenance. It comes to you, you walk into his office, and he says, "What do you think of this?" Well, that's interesting to me, because it shows us a lot about the world in which we live. The propaganda that can be elevated for whatever reason. And in this case, it threw you off the track for a while. You're very open about that. And what would you like to say about where do you go from here?
Well, I mean, fool me once, right? That whole thing, fool me twice and once. But the bottom line is, okay, so we've always stated right from the get-go, more testing needed to be done.
Right.
But we went with it because this is the information that we had. In the future, I think I'm going to be more careful. and before we kind of pull the trigger, as it were, make sure we know what it is we're going to, actually reveal. Maybe go out of our way to really expose and make sure that what we have is correct. But we've done that pretty much through our Watchers series. We've always, kind of brought very fringe topics like the Afghan giant, which, by the way, was that story first broke by Steve Quayle.
Yes.
So we talk about that in Watchers 10. I believe it's real, based on our information with the shooter and then the second witness. So
It seems real.
it seems real.
But you're prepared if it's not.
If it's not, we tell the people immediately. Just I called you within an hour. I also talked, Derek Gilbert over at
Sure.
Skywatch and communicated to him, my gosh, the thing's a hoax.
And you're about as open as it's possible
It's
to be.
absolutely
at this
transparent.
point in time. Let's shift gears here because you have not given up your researches.
No, of course not.
You're moving into some other areas.
Sure.
You're very famous for having brought out the story of the elongated skulls, particularly from Peru. You haven't given that story up. You're moving on to another phase of that story.
Well, we are, and I can't really give a lot of detail with it, but I will
Nor
say
am I
this.
expecting
Yeah.
you to, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to let people know that you're still after it.
On the trail,
On the
all day
trail.
long, on the trail. And what's interesting about the DNA, and this is what kind of bothers me about, Watchers 10 is called Watchers 10 DNA. And you would expect that would be the thing that people would really, the story that people would gravitate to.
Right.
That's not what happened. The fairy came in, the winged creature, the demonic, whatever you want to call it, that just usurped everything. That went viral. It was all over the place. And the DNA evidence was kind of shoved to the background, which frankly is it took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money to get the results. And the bottom line is, which, we've talked about this, it rewrites the Darwinian paradigm. The DNA the evidence points to a European/Middle Eastern ancestry to the Paracas people who are in Peru. And the skulls that we tested and the hair that we tested between 2,000 years old and 800 years old.
And
That
this
shouldn't be
flies
there.
in the face of the Darwinian
Yes, it
model.
does.
For example, the dwellers of the Americas before the Europeans came were said to have migrated across Siberia, and they were Aleuts. They were American, or became the American Indian stock. But your DNA evidence points to
a European Middle Eastern origin.
European Middle Eastern origin. So again, you have put yourself directly into the crosshairs of the establishment.
Yes.
Because the Darwinian model would go up against you in a very big way.
Absolutely. Look, in my opinion, the information that we have regarding the DNA that we present in both Watchers 10 and the book Nephilim Hybrids is groundbreaking, is absolutely groundbreaking. And it's not just one sample. We tested basically 4 different skulls and a 5th one. So we've got 5 samples all pointing towards all the haplogroups. And of course, the haplogroup is from the mitochondrial DNA taken from the mother, pointing to a European/Middle Eastern ancestry. It's not supposed to be there. And you would think that creationists would be jumping up and down at this information because it really throws a monkey wrench, as it were, into the whole Darwinian paradigm. And that's what we find so exciting. We're still on the trail, and there's more to come in the near future.
And you're moving faster than ever. And I can testify to that. Let's take a moment and talk about the anatomy of a hoax on this DVD. This tells a story from your perspective entirely. And by the way, you can obtain this little DVD, Anatomy of a Hoax. It's 40 minutes, and it's yours absolutely free when you purchase the Watchers 10 DVD for $19.95. This would be called the Watchers 10 package, $19.95, and you get the Anatomy of a Hoax. And tell us what's on the Anatomy of a Hoax. Probably a little bit more information.
Just more detail than what we discussed, but basically it shows, here's what we thought it was, and then we go into the vet's office, and you can watch this on film, the way we begin to unravel what we're looking at, and it's just really fascinating.
And here's the entire Watchers series, yours for $129.95. This has what in it, L.A.?
This is all 10 of our DVDs, everything from one of my favorite episodes in Watchers, from the Shroud of Turin, very enigmatic artifact, I believe it's truly the fingerprint of God. I call it God's calling card. I believe it is the burial cloth of our risen Savior.
Beautifully
So,
produced, by the
yeah.
way, and easy to watch, and very inviting. Incidentally, when you get the entire Watchers series for $129.95, you'll also get this book, L.A. Marzulli's book, Nephilim Hybrids, absolutely free, plus The Anatomy of a Hoax. That's the entire Watchers series for $129.95. And you'll find that in our online bookstore, prophecywatchers.com. And hope you'll take advantage of these offers. I hope you'll get The Anatomy of a Hoax, because L.A., I've known him for a long time. He is sincere. He's not hiding behind anything. He's willing to be fooled. Fool me once.
Yeah, fool me once.
And I'm glad you can laugh about
Yeah,
it.
well, you have to.
Because it's not fun
No.
to get hoaxed.
Nope.
But on the other hand, the work will go on.
Absolutely.
And that
And you know, Gary, I'm not glad that we got fooled, but I'm glad that we were diligent and we brought this out. And that's what, we've had hundreds of emails from people thanking us for this, telling us that basically by coming forward like this immediately has sort of bolstered our credibility. And we thank you for that. Thank you for hanging with us and for your kind, wonderful emails. We appreciate it.
we got a little over a minute left, and I don't want to quit here without probing into your activities at present. What are you doing? What's on the table for you in the next few months?
There's an archaeological site which I'll be investigating sometime in November, probably early November. It's in an undisclosed location.
Of course.
Of course. We have been given permission to dig the site.
Yeah.
The first thing we'll do is bring ground penetrating radar to the site and see if there are burial chambers at the site. We really believe that there are, but there's no way of knowing. The GPR will be able to go in there and let us know.
Could we be talking about giants here?
We could be, yes.
We could be.
In an undisclosed location.
Of course, as always, in an undisclosed location. What do you think, given your knowledge of biblical prophecy, the times in which we live? A lot of people are saying can't be much longer. What do you think is going to be the reaction to your work in the future?
I think there'll be a lot of blowback from the ardent Darwinists. I think that even people in the Christian community will be throwing darts and bringing this down. I mean, I think there are people that just can't wait for us to make a mistake like this,
Yes.
and then they just heap it on, and that's okay. It goes with the territory. We got thick skin. We're kind of used to it. But everything that we do is an attempt to look at the biblical prophetic narrative and basically look at that and say it's real, it's true, and it's the veracity of it.
Well, you've heard from the man himself. L.A. Marzulli, we wish you the blessings of the Lord in
Thank
your
you,
work.
Gary. Appreciate it.
Oh, and we appreciate your coming by today. I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, keep watching, everybody. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com or facebook.com/prophecywatchers. Keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.